Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. My name is John Party. Today I'm joined by Paula Kauki, and we have 5 very exciting stories for you today. Unfortunately, to start off with, a CORRADINO prisoner has died 8 days after he attempted suicide. Malta's CHAPO has been given bail after 2 years in custody. Environment Minister Anne Farrugia says Malta needs to convert 65,000 cars to meet 2030 carbon neutrality targets. The MFA has given referees the power to abandon matches in case of racist abuse. And a weather warning has been issued as very strong winds are set to head to Malta. Make sure to stick around to the end of today's episode, where we have a special interview with Thomas BORG, one of Malta's Paralympians heading to Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games next week.
Nibdew l-ewwel storja l-bieraħ fuq Facebook tħabbar illi l-ħabsi illi prova jagħmel suwiċidju 8 ilu fil-faċilità korrettiva ta' Kordin tilef fil-battalja għal ħajtu fl-isptar Mater Dei dan wara 8 ijiem jissielet l-aħbar ħabbaraħu Kolingalja illi qabża da kollha li kienu qegħdin isegwu l-każ għaliex dal-każ nafu kemm ġabar attenzjoni illi ħuh ħalla din id-dinja. Fil-fatt rabta ma' dan l-attentat suwiċidju nħatret inkjesta interna mmexxija mill-psikjatra Anton Grek sabiex ikun stabbilit l-istat tal-benessere mentali u fiżiku tal-ħabsin fil-faċilità korrettiva ta' Kordin biex jekk hemm xi nuqqasijiet jitranġaw u biex wieħed jifhem għaliex kien hemm daqshekk attentati ta' suwiċidji fl-aħħar xhur u snin.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, unfortunately, Gaia was the 13th prisoner to die since 2018. It's good to see that internal inquiry is actually being conducted in this matter because it seems to be somewhat of a recurring issue. In fact, University Dean Andrew Sapadi, who has been quite vocal about prison reform, took to Facebook last night after Galea unfortunately passed away, saying that Home Affairs Ministry and Prison Director should be ashamed that another person has died under their care. So hopefully this internal inquiry leads to something and something is done in the future to prevent more people from dying in prison. Speaking about prison, Malta's CHAPO has been given bail after he spent 2 years in custody. 31-year-old Jordan Atsapardi, who goes by the notorious nickname El Chapo to Malta, and was accused of running a drug distribution network, facing up to 15 charges, which includes trafficking heroin and cocaine, has been released on bail after spending 2 years in preventative custody. He's been released against a personal guarantee of around 150,000 euros and a third-party guarantee of 50,000 euros. He also had to hand in his passport and cannot go near coasts or airports. He also cannot communicate with any of the prosecution witnesses and needs to sign a daily bail book as well as observe a curfew. He was notorious for his alleged drug operation, and he'd become quite proficient at evading the police's grasp. He had multiple properties apparently around Malta featuring fake walls, hard to penetrate steel doors, CCTV, stone barricades, you name it. Pretty much everything you'd expect from El Chapo to Malta.
Fil-fatt dan il-bejl issa jitqis bħala wieħed daqsxejn kontroversjali anke meta wieħed jara kemm il-darba kellhom jirrejdjaw binjiet il-pulizija sabiex irnexxielhom jaqbdu lil Jordan Atsapardi. Fil-fatt l-ewwel rejd saret bil-Kirkara fl-2013, apparti bil-Kirkara kien hemm rejd bħal-Balzan, fil-Marsa, l-Pjetalbla, tal-Bajda, l-Gżira. Ħafna minn dawn ir-rejds ma nstabx, però nstabet evidenza u xhieda li lider ser jintużaw fil-każ li qiegħda tibni prosekuzzjoni rigward Jordan Atsapardi. Jidher ukoll it-tfajla tiegħu hija akkużata b'akkużi simili. Ra wieħed jara u jistenna kif se jevolvi dan il-każ quddiem il-qrati Maltin. Nadu għal-stor kompletament differenti, il-biraħ il-Ministru Anton Farrugia waqt Lovin Daily għamel dikjarazzjoni skjetta fejn għamel ċara illi sabiex Malta tilħaq 2030 carbon neutrality pajjiżna rid ikollu 65,000 karozza elettrika. Ġifieri 65,000 karozza tinqeleb minn dik kif nafu llum bil-petrol u bil-fuel għal dik elettrika. Dan ifisser illi irridu neqilbu ma' 7,000 karozza fis-sena fis-sena għaliex s'issa huwa stmat li mill-400,000 karozza li jew irreġistrati f'pajjiżna huma biss 8,000 dawk li huma elettriċi. Hija daqsxejn ta' mira ambizjuża, il-gvern qed jagħti ma' 9,000 grant in min jixtri karozza elettrika, il-weda li jiżdiedu iktar il-charging bays ifhimni xi ħaġa drastika tissir għaliex mhux ċajta biex teqleb 7,000 karozza fis-sena.
Yeah, no, at this point it seems somewhat unrealistic, even though the world as a whole seems to be making more of a move towards electric cars. It seems, quite an unrealistic goal by 2030, although I hope it obviously does happen, but there are also a number of problems that, people face with electric cars as well. They're not cheap, even though the government grant is there, and there are also issues of sustainability with them in the long run in terms of batteries and whatnot. So I hope it definitely happens, because obviously we can see that climate change is super real. This summer has shown that immensely with drastic heat waves and climate changes and whatnot. So, but this seems a bit unrealistic at the moment. Hopefully things will change in the years to come. Moving on to our fourth story now, concerning the sports world and specifically racism in football, but on a more positive note, the Malta Football Association has now empowered referees to abandon matches in case of racist abuse. This was decided yesterday evening at the Malta Football Association Executive Committee, who voted to empower referees in case fans did exemplify some racist abuse towards players. Under these new regulations, which are similar to that imposed by UEFA, referees will first be obliged to ask for a public announcement to be made requesting that any racist behaviour stop immediately in the case that there is racist behaviour. If this fails, then the referee will be able to suspend the game for a few minutes and send the teams into their locker rooms. And if they come out again and the racist abuse continues, referees will be able to abandon the match completely. In this case, it's up to the MFA's Control, Disciplinary and Ethics Committee to take further action and decide what will happen. But I think it's about time that racism in football is addressed, especially here in Malta. Just last week, we saw an opening weekend of the Premier League. Santa Lucia goalkeeper Julian Archibald was hurled racist abuse by a fan from Floriana FC. Thankfully, both clubs stood up and said that this condemned these actions and asked authorities to investigate it. But this has been going on for some time now, so it definitely needs to be addressed as soon as possible, and hopefully this measure here will curtail the amount of racist incidents we see in football.
Fatt inti fix-xhur li għaddew kien hemm żewġ inċidenti simili, waħda ta' Raiders GFC ta' Malta Lucia u kif ukoll ta' Birkirkar FC Paralympic, fejn kien hemm dawn ukoll attakki razzisti fil-konfront tagħhom. Hija tal-mistħija illi inawgurajna birikna din il-Premier League fl-ewwel ġimgħa tagħha b'dawn il-kummenti razzisti, juri kemm għadna il-bot milli ngħidu li n-nies huma edukati li meta tkun irrabjat għax il-goalkeeper laqa jew ma laqax il-ballun m'għandix tiġik f'moħħok l-ewwel ħaġa li tagħmel illi tattakka b'mod razzist għax li kieku laqgħu il-ballun ma kienx ikollna dawn il-kummenti. Ġifieri wieħed irid jitgħallem, wieħed jitgħallem mill-uliedu u tajb li naraw li l-MFA ħadet azzjoni daqshekk drastika biex ma nerġgħux naraw episodji simili. Nagħlqu l-episodju tal-lum b'aħbar kompletament differenti u ħafifa ħattir il-baħar milli jidher ser ikun daqsxejn perikolus minħabba il-riħ qawwi li mistenni jiġi mill-majstral u għalhekk l-appell huwa biex min ħobjom u min ħobjo dossier ta' bajjiet fejn jaħkem ir-riħ mill-majstral biex nevitaw li jkun hemm traċedji f'daw il-jiem jidher imma però li sa tmiem il-ġimgħa ir-riħ għandu jikkalma. Please osservaw il-sinjali, osservaw id-direzzjoni tar-riħ u l-appelli, ħadd ma jkun hero, ħadd ma jipprova jaqbessjom biex juri kemm hu b'saħħtu.
Yeah, it might be best over the past week to just, instead of heading to the beach, stay inside with the AC on, watching Netflix until the wind passes over. I think we've become accustomed to strange weather this summer, so it's another week of wind and then we go back, hopefully, to more normal weather. But yeah, absolutely take care and stay safe. With that being said, this brings us to the end of our new segment of Lovin Daily. Make sure to stick around for our special interview with Thomas BORG, one of Malta's Paralympians, heading to Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games.
In Malta, we don't say
Welcome back to Lovin Daily. We're now joined by Thomas BORG, a Paralympian, one of two Paralympians heading to Tokyo 2020 Paralympics starting next week. Thomas, thank you for joining us today. I know you're super busy preparing for the Paralympics. How is your preparation looking like at the moment? How are you feeling?
So basically the past couple of weeks have been high intensity training to clean up anything that we had to fix just before the game. So if it was block starts, if it was some endurance, some speed. And over the past week or so, we slowed down our training and tapering to prepare for the games. It hasn't been easy. Obviously, we have to take all the COVID precautions,
Right.
and I've been training a lot alone, which really affects how you train, even mentally, because having someone you can speak to during your session or having your teammates around really helps. And obviously that wasn't the case. It wasn't best case scenario, but we pushed through and we're doing our best.
Do you feel prepared then?
Yes.
For the Paralympics?
So obviously I feel very prepared. I've been working really hard to get to the best possible place I can for these games. I'm really excited, obviously. Yes, but we put in lots and lots of work with me, my coaches, physiotherapists, nutritionists. So it's a balance between all aspects of the sport, not just the training.
Right, and for those who aren't aware, Thomas is competing in the T47, 100 meter and 400 meter track events. Can you, perhaps for those who aren't quite familiar what T47 is, explain what that category currently entails?
So basically, the categories are split in different disabilities, different impairments. So there are wheelchair users, there are people with cerebral palsy, there are people, blind people, and there are the amputees. So there are lower limb amputees and upper limb amputees. I fall under the upper limb amputees, and that is the T47 class. Then there are different classes for the lower leg amputees. The 100 meters will be taking place on the 27th of September, and this is my first race. And then the 400 will be taking place a week later on the 3rd.
And this is your, I believe, second time competing internationally and elite competition. How do you feel about that? I mean, you'll be going up against other athletes who naturally will be competing many times abroad, right? More experienced, more seasoned athletes. Do you feel you're on par with them, or do you feel you're disadvantaged because you haven't competed as much abroad?
Yes, so before I started my athletic journey, I started in swimming. And I competed swimming very competitively in the para scene. I've competed in the World Championships in London in 2019, and I've competed in multiple other championships around Europe, and these are the top of the top athletes that there are, even faster than many of the Maltese athletes without any disability. Similarly, the same thing in the para scene in athletics. Yes, I mean, I don't feel any disadvantage to them, because I've always done my mental warm-ups. I've always prepared mentally to visualize that it's my own race. I'm only racing against myself. But yes, these are full-time athletes, most of them. Their life is based on their training schedules only. Right. They live in dorms with their whole team, and they spend training camps all around Europe. Also training high altitude to improve their their body composition as well. So there are many factors that go into their training, which is still very new or
missing.
Exactly.
Missing in Maltese. And just to clarify, you are a full-time student.
Yes.
As well. So you're heading up to the Paralympics, and you're also a student. So you have to balance this sports with your studies, with your social life, whereas other athletes abroad, for example, are fully committed to their sport. Do you feel then you don't get enough support here in Malta as an athlete, as a para-athlete specifically as well? Because it's quite specific being a para-athlete. You have different classifications. Some para-athletes need specific type of facilities and equipment. Do you think the para-athlete community here get enough support?
So the Paralympic community is definitely growing. The Paralympic committee is doing an amazing job in helping us building the foundations that Malta needs to bring us back up to par to the whole scene in the world. So as you know, Malta has obtained medals in the Paralympic Games in the 1960s and 1980s, but for over 20 years there hadn't been any competitors representing Malta. And with this new change, with a great secretary, great president, great team working behind them, they're really helping us set the foundations right for us athletes who are competing currently and those who are going to compete hopefully in the future representing Malta. So yes, I mean, I wouldn't say that the scene in sport is 100% ideal in Malta, but there's been a very, very big improvement in the scene.
Amazing. And I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier and you keep bringing up, which is kind of the mental aspect of the game. A lot of sport is 50% physical, 50% mental preparation. And this Olympics, Tokyo 2020 Olympics, we saw the emphasis on mental health.
Yes.
Simone Biles, for example, and prior to that there was Naomi Osaka with tennis. How important is mental preparation for you heading into the games, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic? When you said you've been isolated from a lot of people, how important is that for you?
So yes, I mean, I think it's one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of the sport, because if I know mentally that I'm 100%, 110% prepared for this race, and maybe physically I'm not 100% there, rather than the other way around, that I'm not 100% mentally and physically I'm there, I have a better chance of there's a better result that will come out from me having better mental health, for sure. Yes, in Poland, when I competed in the European Championships in June, I spent 10 days in a hotel room, which was not big. I can't really go out anywhere except from and to the track. And that was already the first experience which helped me shape my and prepare for these games differently than I did for Poland. I mean, swab tests every day. There's a lot of things that have to go in, which are extra to what it is usually. So now knowing that how that was done and how it was prepared, I'm going in a bit more relaxed. I know that our chef de mission, Julian, is doing an amazing job in keeping us administratively up to date. Yes, so there's a lot of support. Even with I speak to a psychologist. It really helps keeping the conversation. Get things off of my chest, and yes, so I have a good team around me, and that helps me keep the cognitive side of my training up.
Amazing. And it's quite an unusual Olympics, Paralympics this year, as we all know. What are you most looking forward to about heading to Tokyo? Is it the village, the race? Are there certain para-athletes you're excited to meet?
So I'm looking forward to seeing the different kinds of athletes that there will be. Obviously, as much as I've experienced people with physical disabilities, I'm always used to being in the minority, and when I'm there, I'll be in the majority, and that feels different even to me. So, for example, one of my friends from Turkey, he has both arms which are amputated. Seeing him do things with just his feet, playing with his phone, opening lids, it's very impressive to see what the human body can do. Also, I'm looking forward to seeing the different sports, the different people, different cultures, meeting the whole, all the Paralympians there, the food court and the village, everywhere.
It's definitely going to be an amazing experience. And in the day, you're there to race What can we
Exactly.
expect from you from the 100 meters and 400 meters? Any personal records you're planning to break, national records, or maybe a medal in the works?
Maybe it's a bit early in the middling stage, but hopefully I don't like speaking out.
You don't jinx it.
Yes, but yes, hopefully I have some good runs. I'm looking forward to it and doing a good performance.
Amazing. We're all super excited for you and heading to the Paralympics. We'll be watching as much as we can, although we know it's at some ridiculous times in the morning here.
At 3 in the morning.
3 in the morning, but we'll definitely be following you nonetheless. Thomas, wish you the best of luck in Tokyo. Enjoy, have a great time, and we can't wait to see how you perform on the track. Thanks for coming in today, and for everyone who tuned in, thanks for watching and have a day full of loving.